Hello everyone, it's me, and today the Tide Pod Challenge explained. Let's go!
Now I'm sure you've seen the latest wave of PSAs imploring you not to eat a Tide Pod.
No, don't.
Well, I'm not here to tell you not to eat a Tide Pod. I'm just gonna tell you what to expect if you try. You see, the pod's outer layer is a plastic wrapping that puts its contents under pressure, so you don't have to bite down all that hard for the gel inside to explode out. If the gel does indeed come into contact with the insides of your mouth, which is kind of the point in all this, its low pH levels will begin killing any cells it comes into contact with immediately. And when those cells die, they don't just vanish, they leave behind their remains, leaving your mouth filled with dead cells and damaged tissue as the gel causes an immediate burning sensation. A burning sensation that will be agonizingly painful. The gel of the pod is thick, and because of how thick and sticky it is, if some of it goes down your throat, it can become stuck or lodged in your esophagus, killing even more cells as it goes. This, in turn, will kick your immune system into high gear, resulting in swelling. That swelling of your esophagus can also affect the muscles that control your breathing, meaning you just might find yourself choking even if you do happen to vomit up the detergent. If you manage to survive the Tide Pod Challenge by not choking to death, congratulations! You now get the joy of spending several days with the lingering pain of chemical burns inside of your body. Now, for those of you who fancy yourself hardcore enough for a real challenge, I've got two words for you. Chubby Bunny.
Chubby Bunny Challenge!
Internet, welcome to Film Theory.
Hello Internet, welcome to Film Theory. Alright, case in point, if someone was to challenge these kind of stupid things to you, just say no. Alright, you say, you don't have the guts? Come on, be a man, show me some guts, you know. Do the right thing. And yeah, the right thing is not doing something so stupid. Alright, I have guts, and more importantly, I have my brain. Alright?
Today,
or you can switch it up a bit. Don't you have one?
We're talking about dumb news. And by dumb news, I don't mean people chomping on Tide Pods. I'm talking about the media that gobbled up this story faster than an unattended 6-year-old with brightly colored detergent packet.
Don't do it, you know. Keep it away from the young ones, you know. Keep it high up. High up. They will have a hard time trying to figure out, oh, you can use a ladder or a chair.
As the story goes, sometime in late December 2017, several viral tweets brought up the idea of eating Tide Pods like candy. The biggest being this thread with everyone's favorite lunchtime snack gushers trying to get them to make a Tide Pod themed flavor. Now, this was far from the first time that the idea of detergent packet equals candy was brought up, but it was the first time that people actually took it seriously, causing a supposed epidemic sweeping through the internet as kids across the country started filming themselves cramming laundry detergent into their mouths. The internet began mocking the trend in its usual fashion. Numerous businesses moved to cash in. YouTube and Facebook began banning Tide Pod videos, and Tide released what turned out to be one of the most baffling PSAs of all time.
No.
And of course, there was the requisite mainstream media coverage wagging their fingers at teenagers across the country saying, "Can you believe kids these days?" Or, "Oh, these stupid teenagers trying to find viral fame." Except they're completely wrong to blame the teenagers. This time, mainstream media is the one to blame. If you stop and look at the data, it becomes clear that the story of this dangerous new trend online was something that they created. They took a small handful of jokes and videos and blew it up into a fad that suddenly had thousands of copycats.
Oh my god, so this time it's the old people that I fought. You say sorry. Huh? I'm waiting to hear your apology. Waiting for it. Still waiting for it. Waiting for it forever.
So don't be wagging your finger at kids these days, news media. You're the problem this time, and good old Mad Pat is about to show you why. A January 22nd press release from the American...
What's your apology? Seek forgiveness
Association of Poison Control Center reported that between January 1st and January 14th, they received a total of 39 cases of teens intentionally exposing themselves to liquid laundry packets. 39 cases in 14 days. The following week, there were an additional 47 calls. In other words, we see a huge spike in the number of Poison Control Center calls relating to teens ingesting Tide Pod after January 14th. Now, remember that date because it's not just an increase in calls after January 14th, it's also an increase in videos. As I mentioned before, most people claim that teens started munching on Tide Pod packets in late December and through early January. But if you actually look at the number, that just isn't true. From December 1st through January 7th, there's only 242 Tide Pod videos across all of Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook. Yeah, I checked them all. Now, that may seem like a lot, but look at this. Between the 7th and 14th, there were 387 more in 1 week as opposed to 5 weeks. But here's where things start to get crazy. Between the 14th and the 21st, 1,502 new Tide Pod videos get uploaded in just 7 days. The next week, another 1,517 new videos. So any way you look at the data, it seems like between the 13th and 14th, something happened that caused a sudden spike in Tide Pod related incidents.
Mainstream media.
This period here is when the trend blew up. Now, you might think it was online influencers talking about the trend that spread awareness of the problem, but that's definitely not the case here. The top Tide Pod video online belongs to the meme lord Can Your Chair Do This PewDiePie, whose video on the subject was released on January 4th, racking up most of its 6 million views in a matter of 5 days. If he were truly the one driving more videos to be made, you would see an uptick in the aftermath of his video. But what you actually see is the exact opposite. Looking at Tide Pod video uploads day by day, the trend was practically dead around the 9th and 10th, having only around 20 videos uploaded each of those days, the lowest point that they had been for months. Which means that for the first time ever, the media can't blame something on ya boy Pewds. Truth be told, most of the internet was kinda over Tide Pods by that point. Nope, if the news is gonna point the finger of blame at anyone, it has to be at themselves. January 12th is when Tide released their no PSA. The next day is when news organizations really started to pick up on this story, prompting Google searches for Tide Pod Challenge to hit an all-time high, increasing to 10 times the amount of search traffic relative to the previous week. And it's here when we see the uploads of videos labeled with Tide Pods start to skyrocket, reaching between 100 and 300 new uploads every single day, nearly 10 times more uploads per day than when this quote-unquote epidemic was supposedly so bad earlier in the month. The news media had created a mountain out of a molehill, sparked hundreds of copycats, and thus created the dumbest and potentially most dangerous meme of 2018. Now, let me be clear, I don't think they did any of this intentionally. Truth be told, they're just not smart enough. For instance,
Yeah, they are just not smart enough. Right? I'm talking about you, the old people, you are not smart enough. Don't blame us, you are not smart.
after Tide Pods became a fad, a number of posts appeared on social media from people photographing stores that had anti-theft measures in place for the detergent. People in the media found those posts and concluded, hey, it must be because of that crazy new challenge. Except there is a problem with those stories. Retailers like Walmart and Kroger have been keeping products locked up to prevent theft for years, with news stories dating all the way back to 2012 reporting that laundry detergent is one of the market's most shoplifted items. But hey, why bother to check the facts when we have these viral tweets to go off of? Surely these are 100% factually accurate. The story writes itself. Basically, what I'm trying to say here is that in their coverage of this meme, the news created a huge case of copycat effect. According to David Phillips, sociologist at University of California at San Diego, the copycat effect goes as follows. Quote, when I'm waiting at a traffic light and the light is red, sometimes I wonder whether I should just cross and jaywalk. Then somebody else does it, and so I do it too. I'm getting permission to act from someone else who's engaging in a deviant act. End quote. In other words, watching other people engage in certain behaviors makes it more acceptable for us to engage in those same activities.
Even though it is incorrect. So there's something called the copycat effect. Huh, interesting. Watching someone do it give us sort of acceptance to it. Huh. Isn't that mere exposure effect? recency effect.
Logan Paul. Excuse me. But in the case of Tide Pods, the sophisticated internet users knew that it was mostly meant as a joke. But once it hit mainstream media, those people just started to do it because they thought it was real. In fact, one area of heavy research right now has featured sociologists looking into how reporting teen suicides actually causes suicide rates to increase. This applies locally as well as on the national level. When Marilyn Monroe's suicide was widely reported on, the national suicide rate increased by 12%. Because of this, many news organizations have policies in place against reporting teen suicides in obituaries. In the process, these news organizations are acknowledging that they have an ethical responsibility to protect the welfare of the public.
True, it's not just publishing the news, it's knowing that you have an ethical responsibility. With great power comes great responsibility, especially when, for example, right now, I'm doing a video right now, I'm doing live streams. I want to spread the message of wholesomeness, positivity, and yeah, thank you all so much for being so uplifting and motivating towards one another. Thank you.
Which then kinda goes against what we're about to talk about next, how they choose their stories. Cause all of this begs the question, just how widespread of an epidemic was the Tide Pod nonsense? Earlier I mentioned the 86 total cases cited by poison control, which at first glance seems like a lot. But to steal a line from PewDiePie, context matters. Poison control centers across the US receive millions of calls every single year. In 2016 alone, American poison control centers received 46,306 calls from parents concerned that their kid had consumed too many vitamins. If 86 people eating a Tide Pod and calling poison control is cause for a news frenzy lasting for weeks, then where the heck's the news story about the 46,000 kids chomping down on too many Flintstones chewables?
That is a very correct concern. I agree with you. Like, that's a very creative concern. PewDiePie is correct in this case, in which context matters. You can't just copy paste the news. You can't just Control C, Control V onto those kind of stuff without any context, without any understanding of the context. Yeah, context does matter.
Just looking at the numbers, telling parents not to let their kids eat too many vitamins may seem like it would be the much more useful PSA than having Gronk tell us,
use Tide Pods for washing, not eating.
Well, as it turns out, the fact that Tide Pod ingestion is so statistically insignificant is actually a huge contributor to how it became such a big story. Research has shown that people respond most to news if it reports stories that are unique, which actually makes sense when you stop and think about it, right? The word new is even in the name news. This is why a crazy murderous clown roaming through the woods is likely to make national headlines, while deaths caused by traffic accidents just don't. In terms of actual danger to you, traffic accidents are a much bigger threat, but they just aren't newsworthy. They're an accepted part of everyday life.
Don't accept it, come on. Literally millions of people die every single year due to car accidents. We can stop it. We can genuinely stop it.
Because people react to news stories based on novelty, the actual prevalence of the issue, like Tide Pod poisoning, doesn't actually matter. In fact, the more common it is, the less likely it's gonna get reported on. That's why tens of thousands of vitamin overdoses get ignored, while a handful of Tide Pod challenges are your top story for weeks. What's more, people are more likely to respond to news stories based on how threatening they sound. Research has shown that stories about non-threatening topics just don't get the same kind of emotional response as stories informing people about threats to their safety. This is why reporting always slants negative. Reporting on weird dangers of the modern world is the most reliable way to keep an audience engaged. And what's weirder and more scary sounding to traditional media than trends that teenagers are engaging with on social media?
I think MacPack does state a very strong, clear point, right? If you are lazy, if you do not have the time to research, if you just want to go the easy way out, go for anger, go for madness, go for frustration. But wholesome things, positivity, those kind of uplifting, motivational, inspirational things can be reported well if you actually done the research and be creative about it, if you've done the reporting well. But how many people will actually spend the time and effort into making such benefiting news when they can, the same amount of time that you can create something that can help the world, you can make 10 or even 20 that can destroy the world. Like what Batman said, Some people just want to watch the world burn.
Conveniently leave out the part that shows that the number of people actually engaging in this behavior is minuscule, and you've got yourself a viral news story and a nation overreacting to something that wasn't really a big deal in the first place. And all us people who understand how to use the internet and internet culture suffer as a result. This whole Tide Pod story, as dumb as it is, serves as an important reminder that now more than ever, media seems to be concerned not with keeping us informed, but instead with keeping us engaged.
Keep us educated. Teach us. I'm teaching you, you be educated.
While it's absolutely fun to laugh at all the memes, most of us missed out on the real story here. That this whole threat was basically a manufactured craze that even at the height of its popularity was barely even noticeable in terms of the total number of people it was actually affecting. It also serves as a good reminder that directly lying to us isn't the only way for news to mislead us. It's actually possible for the media to tell stories that are technically factually true while also giving us an inaccurate view of what's really going on in the world around us.
You must understand, alright? The phrase truth and nothing but the truth and the whole truth can, technically speaking, mislead you. Technically speaking, it's the truth, but it's misleading. I'm not saying a lie, it's just you are being misled by another truth of the truth, in the truth. Gosh, why can't everyone be decent? Why can't everyone be wholesome, be understanding, be polite, be respectful? Understand one another, be welcoming, alright, and just be good human beings to society.
The biggest bias in media isn't how stories are told, but which stories are told. For the last 3 years, I've been honored to partner with Bill and Melinda Gates to talk about their annual letter, and this year's touches on these exact ideas. If you listen to the headlines shouted on Twitter or the stats tossed around in newspapers, it seems like the world is in a terrible state. Unconscionable, 7,000 babies die daily. But if you read a bit deeper into the facts, what do you see? Despite record lows for child mortality, the number of children who die every year has been cut literally in half. But that's not the fact that's making headlines here. It's not threatening enough. Global poverty is declining, but not fast enough. Not fast enough, you say? In just 20 years, humanitarian efforts have been able to decrease it by 50%. How much faster do you want us to go? We're talking about the whole world here. By age 3, inequality is clear. Rich kids attend school. Poor kids stay with a grandparent. Except you left out the fact that more children are attending school now than ever before. In fact, people perceive things to be getting worse, even at the same time that they're actually becoming better. For instance, this graph shows that the number of plane crashes has decreased over the last 25-year period.
This can be misleading even though the evidence proves something that is good. If you report it poorly, it can be misleading. It's both the truth, just that you are being misled.
Media coverage of plane crashes has increased in that same span of time.
If you word it differently.
Yes, there is always room for improvement, and sure, we all wish that change would happen faster. But it's important to remember that we live in an incredible time. A time for optimism. A time where good people are out there every single day working to make a positive difference in the lives of others. I mean, the snow leopard is no longer endangered. Honeybee populations are on the rise for like the first time ever. Child labor is down 50% since the year 2000. HIV and AIDS is no longer the leading cause of death in Africa. And get this, a cancer vaccine has been proven effective in mice and has now moved on to human testing. I mean, seriously, I couldn't believe this stuff either, but these are the true facts that don't get reported on every day. So click the link below to read Bill and Melinda Gates' letter and get a dose of positivity for a change. It's a rare feeling these days online, but reading their letter was an incredible reminder that hard work and love for your fellow man truly can make a difference. Because in the end, the scariest news of them all is that these positive stories are the ones that don't get reported. But hey, that's just a theory.
No. Tada.
And cut.
And cut. But hey, that's just a theory. Come on. Make the world be a better place for you and for me and the entire human race. Thank you so much. Well, thank you so much for watching this video. If you do like this video, please remember to like, share, and subscribe to my channel. Comment down below if you have anything to share about us. Don't forget to follow my channel and sincerely appreciate all of your support and encouragement for me. Very uplifting and motivating. And I hope to see you in the next video. But hey, that's just theory. A film theory. And cut. Thank you. And I hope to see you all in my next video. Thank you so much. And thank you so much for making the world a better place. For you and for me and the entire human race, there are people dying. If you care enough for living, make a better place for you and for me. Make a better place for you and for me. Make a better place for you and for me. Thank you.